There is a revolution that's now bringing down some very powerful men accused of groping or sexually assaulting women and even young men, boys too, people in much weaker positions. Now, Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein, of course, has been sacked by his own company for assaulting young actresses and staff. Dozens of women have come forward. Then there's Oscar actor Kevin Spacey. He's had his show House of Cards cancelled after being accused of molesting young men. And even 3 decades ago, an actor who was then just 14 years old. Director Brett Ratner has been dumped by Warner Brothers after 6 women, including actresses Olivia Munn and Natasha Henstridge, accused him of gross sexual harassment and behaviour. Now, all that sounds very cut and dried to me, and good riddance to these guys. But now there's some more problematic cases. There's actor Dustin Hoffman. He's accused of propositioning and fondling a 17-year-old intern 32 years ago. He's apologised. Well, OK, but how about this? In Britain, Defence Minister Sir Michael Fallon has now resigned after being accused of repeatedly putting his hand on the knee of a female radio presenter at a dinner 15 years ago. And now the woman, Julia Hartley-Brewer, says Fallon had stopped doing that when she threatened to punch him in the face. She says no offence was taken, and she says this is now all a witch hunt. Although, we should point out, there are some other allegations made against this minister too.
Many of these allegations have been false, but I realise that in the past I may have fallen below the high standards that we require of the armed forces that I have the honour to represent.
Now, joining me to discuss this revolution is Bettina and commentator on gender issues. Bettina, it's wonderful to see you again. Now, listen, Bettina, some of these examples, like the Weinstein one, of course, in particular, I can only think, great. I mean, tremendous. Here's a monstrous bully being brought down by women and to make it more delicious, being brought down by people he once thought was too weak to resist him. Am I wrong to be so happy about this?
Oh, no. I think there's no question that Weinstein is a bully and, has certainly misused his power to take advantage of women. And many will be celebrating, of course, what's happening to him. But I think there are complexities there. I think it's very interesting to see what's been going on with the women. There have been some very brave women who've all along spoken out about his behaviour, even to the detriment of their own careers. But there's been a hell of a lot who essentially took hush money and sat there not saying anything until now. Everybody's joining in this rush of Me Too and telling the world what happened to them. And when you think about it, there's no question that everyone's known about this man and his behaviour, and yet still women were lining up for interviews with him to have a chance of getting a part in one of his films, and were willing to risk the casting couch. They were willing to dance with the devil for the sake of advancing their careers. I mean, I think there are complexities here as far as women's behaviour as well.
And no doubt we're hearing from people who were outraged that he did this. We're not hearing from women who maybe gave in or willingly submitted. I don't know. But moving on to Kevin Spacey then.
Oh, sorry,
well, let's move on to Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, okay,
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say what I think is outrageous about the Weinstein example is people are saying we should take his name off his movies. They're taking his name off TV series. I mean, this idea that a man who has done really inappropriate things in his personal behaviour, that none of his life's work matters anymore. I mean, are we going to stop Oscar Wilde's plays being shown because he was a pederast, or not allow Wagner music to be played because he was anti-Semitic? I mean, I really worry about this sort of tendency to really judge everybody by their personal behaviour and think that their contribution another way doesn't matter at all.
I don't know. I still find it really hard to even think of buying or enjoying the paintings of Donald Friend, for example, because I know that bloke was a pedophile.
The King's Speech was still a great movie, wasn't it?
The King's Speech was still a great movie, that's true, but I don't want to see Weinstein's name on it. What's the harm there? But Kevin Spacey... Kevin Spacey then... Am I wrong to think that in this case, then, finally the victims are getting their chance to speak out?
Oh, no. I mean, that's a really tricky one, because what he's done is come out as gay, thinking that will, you know, fudge things a bit, the fact that he made these advances to a 14-year-old boy. And, of course, this is dreadful for the whole gay movement, who worked so hard to point out that adult gay men they're not pederasts, they're not chasing young men. And here Spacey is, you know, really making that a very difficult issue for them. And a lot of people are very angry about that, which is quite reasonable.
Well, I think so, absolutely. He's essentially blurring the line and saying if you're gay, that explains paedophilia, and I think that was disgusting. All right, let's move on to a harder case. The British Defence Minister's quit for putting his hand on a woman's knee 15 years ago, although, you know, we should point out, I suspect from his statement, that there might be a few more instances to come out. What do you make of that case? What's
been really interesting is this woman, the woman who had the hand on the knee, Julia Hartley-Brewer, has been speaking out a lot. She's a radio presenter, and she's very interesting. She's saying she objects to the witch hunt that's going on. She said in her case she had no problem handling it, and she thought it was all a bit funny at the time. And there is a big difference between a hand on a knee and a man raping a woman, and we need to differentiate, not just conduct this massive witch hunt where any man who's ever done anything is at risk of losing his career. And she's also pointing out that sexual harassment is about unwanted sexual advances, and they're not always unwanted. She's been talking today about, all these gorgeous young things who are throwing themselves in the laps of powerful men in Westminster, balding middle-aged men, and who certainly welcome advances from these men. It is not just there are whole areas of grey in this debate to do with women's behaviour as well as men. I'm not saying that there might not be some really serious cases come out. There's a whole list of men who are being accused in Britain, but I think there are a lot of other stuff being caught up in this net, which is really about vindictive women trying to punish men that they have got, where they've got to be in a bonnet about something that happened in their relationship.
Well, moving on, this is, of course, this whole outing of terrible sexists has moved now to Australia. We've now got a prominent Sydney barrister, Charles Waterstreet, the alleged inspiration for the series Rake, is now accused by two of his former paralegals of sexist behaviour, including showing them allegedly pornographic pictures, watching porn in front of them, making suggestive comments, getting one to buy stuff for his mistresses or whatever. Now, Waterstreet says they're exaggerating, or they're taking things out of context, or they're talking about stuff that was evidence in a case that he was hearing at the time. What do you make of all this?
I think it's totally hilarious, this case. I mean, Waterstreet, it was the model for Rake. And we all know that whole series depends on the Rake's, what's his name, Cleaver Green's outrageous behaviour, including his sexual predatory behaviour, that he's always chasing women and womanising and harassing them and jumping on them, and that's his persona, as indeed it's Charles Waterstreet's persona. Whenever he writes something, he mentions the women he's seduced. He's always dropping in his sexual references. He loves outraging people about sexual content. And these young women, law students, don't do any due diligence to find out this man's history. There's an Archibald painting of Charles Waterstreet with naked women crawling up his legs. I mean, it wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be hard to discover this man has a reputation. And yet they go for a job interview, and sure enough, he's a bit outrageous, and he talks about sexual stuff, and he shows them sexy things, and one of them said, oh, well, she was a bit, shocked by that, but he's a really famous man. I mean, talk about dancing with the devil. She went back willingly for another dose and only then resigned. I mean, come on, women. You have to have some responsibility for your own behaviour.
But, I'm hearing you, right? I'm hearing you, although it's making my life seem rather drab and ordinary to listen to you. But anyway, but Bettina, like my wife is enjoying this more than perhaps she should then, but because she's thinking, look, think of all those sexist bosses everywhere. They're really, terrorising their younger female staff, they're now freaking. They must be thinking, oh, my God, what's going to come out of my past now? I'm going to be outed and all that. Surely that's a good thing.
Well, it's a good thing if men have seriously been harassing women and you know, misusing their power to push women into doing things they don't want to do. There's no question we have to call out that behaviour, and if some of those men are exposed, that's a very good thing. But if we're dragging into this net men who once put a hand on a woman's knee and she was quite capable of saying, no, I don't want that to happen, I mean, this is a witch hunt. This is a real... I think these sort of campaigns are really dangerous, and they can be extremely vindictive and promoted for, you know, by women who have all the wrong motives.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Now Britain has lost the Defence Minister who may actually be capable. I don't know. I don't know him from bar of soap, because he put a hand on the knee of a woman 15 years ago who said she didn't take offence. I find it really quite astonishing. But anyway, Bettina, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.